very hot. Welcome back, and if you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. And today we're making risotto. So we're gonna make a mushroom risotto. So first you're gonna need one large onion, and we're just gonna quickly mince this up. I like to go extremely fine. I don't wanna go any bigger than the actual grain of rice. You're gonna need arborio or carnaroli rice, which is perfect for risotto as it releases a lot of starch. So we're gonna mince this onion up. Along with that onion, you're going to need is a quarter bunch to half bunch of parsley. And this is gonna be for our mushrooms. We're gonna make the mushroom risotto. So we're first gonna start with the mushrooms and then make the risotto. This shouldn't take more than about 45 minutes. Risotto takes about 20 minutes to cook. It's very labor intensive if you would, because you can't leave the stove top as it will start to burn or stick to the pot and you have to constantly be mixing it. So mince your onion, and then we're going to mince that parsley as well. And part of this onion is going to be used for the risotto itself, and part of it is going to be used for the mushrooms. So we're going to cook these separately. And then for our mushrooms, this is just a mix of a little bit of everything. If you can't find mixed mushrooms, then go ahead and just use creminis or button mushrooms. It's totally okay. As long as you cook them enough, you're going to release a lot of that water and intensify the flavor. Shiitakes are really good. For shiitakes, you do need to remove the stems as they're quite woody. But with all these, we're going to move the stems, and we're going to use these stems in some stock to add to the risotto to add a little bit more mushroom flavor. So save those ends. But just clean them up, remove any dirt that's on there. Don't wash these in water because they'll absorb a lot of that water and kind of ruin the flavor. And what we're about to do is try to get all that water out of there and intensify the mushroom flavor. So this large oyster mushroom, we're just gonna kind of slice into little pieces so that it's actually edible on a spoon or on a fork. You can mince it wherever you like. I'm kind of doing it along strips of it, but this will get relatively soft as we cook it. So it's okay if you go a little bit larger with the oysters. And I've already made some chicken stock. So to this chicken stock, I'm going to add in all those scraps from the mushrooms. And we're just gonna let that simmer for about 45 minutes. We're gonna add a little bit of an onion just to intensify the flavor. Now for the mushrooms, into a sauce pot, a little bit of olive oil, and we're going to add in our onions, about a quarter cup to half cup of onions minced. We're gonna sweat those down, add a little bit of butter, because butter is delicious. We're gonna let that butter melt before adding in our mushrooms. We're just gonna add in all of our mushrooms all at the same time. Throw them in there. We're gonna give them a little bit of stir, and we're gonna go ahead and add in about 2 tablespoons of minced parsley, and we're gonna season it now with a little bit of salt and pepper. This salt is gonna drag out that moisture that's in those mushrooms, so it's gonna help you kind of pull the moisture out of it and intensify the flavor. So you can go ahead and add that salt right now, and we're going to cover this to get them to start releasing their liquid, and then we're going to remove that top later on to kind of evaporate it and intensify the flavor. So give everything a nice stir, cover it, and let this cook for about 10 minutes on medium-low heat, and give it a check every once in a while to make sure it's not sticking. So while those mushrooms are going, we're going to grate our cheese. This is extremely important for risotto. So this is just Parmesan Reggiano on a microplane, or however you want to grate it. You're going to need about 2 cups of Parmesan grated to 1 cup of dried rice. If you want it cheesier, make it cheesier. If you don't want it as cheesy, reduce the cheese. It's totally up to you. I like mine kind of right down the middle. I don't want it so cheesy that you can't taste the mushrooms, but totally up to you again on how much cheese you want to use. Do be mindful when you're using cheese that it is salty, so careful with your seasoning when you're actually seasoning the risotto. Along with that, we're going to do some chives just to add a little bit of brightness to the risotto, since it's a lot of mushroom and onion and stock and rice and starch. Just a little bit of chives, just minced, just add a little bit of brightness, a little bit of tang from that onion. And then Butter, extremely important when making risotto. So a half stick of butter. We're gonna use this to mount the risotto at the very end where we add the cheese. This is gonna add a little bit of creaminess and a lot of texture to the final product. So put that to the side. We're gonna go check in on our mushrooms. You'll see here that they have halved in size as they've slowly lost a lot of their liquid. And we're just gonna give this a little stir. We're gonna let this just reduce in terms of the liquid left in there for about 5 minutes. And then we're just gonna take it off the heat and leave it to the side until we need to mix it into the actual rice. Now you can totally add a little bit of lemon juice here. I added just a little bit of salt and a little bit more pepper and just left onto the side. Now for the rice itself, we're gonna add a little bit of butter to a heavy pot, and we're going to let that melt before adding in about a 1/4 cup of minced onions. Not too much since we do have a little bit of onion in our mushroom mix. We're gonna let that just soften and get a little translucent. We're gonna add in just a little bit of olive oil, just because I need a little bit more fat in the pan. You can add a little bit of butter if you'd like. I like to add a little bit of olive oil just for the flavor. And then we're gonna add in our rice, and we're gonna toast our rice now. So we're gonna throw it into the pan, we're gonna mix it around, and we're essentially gonna toast it. And the great way of knowing when it's right is you're gonna pull it out and you're gonna see it's slightly translucent around the edge, but in the center it's hard and white. Feel it, it should be hot to touch. And once you do that, we're gonna add in a 1/4 cup of white wine, dry white wine. A ratio for risotto is 1 cup of risotto rice, or dry rice, to 4 cups of liquid, so it's a 4-to-1 ratio. So we're gonna add in our first 1/4 cup, and from here we're gonna add in 1 cup of stock at a time until it evaporates. So make sure your stock is hot. Don't add in cold stock to risotto. If not, this can take triple as long. So go ahead and add in your stock. This is all on medium heat, and we're gonna start mixing this around. And it's consistently mixing the rice the whole time you're making it, and this is gonna release the starch. So with a rubber spatula or a wooden spoon, we're gonna do this. We're gonna be slightly aggressive, but we're not gonna be so aggressive that we're turning this into porridge by destroying the kernels. The whole idea is to knock that starch out. So here you can see the stock's reduced, it's big bubbles, and we're gonna add in another cup of stock. And then again, back to mixing. This is tedious, but this is how you're gonna get a really nice and creamy risotto. So take your time, it's worth it. And here you can see that starch is starting to build up, and we're just gonna keep mixing and adding as we need. So you can see the bubbles are big and thick again, and we're gonna add in another cup of stock. Here you can see it is starting to get nice and thick, and we're gonna move the pan as well as stir at the same time, and we're gonna start to release more and more starch from that rice. And we're just gonna keep doing this until the rice is cooked. We're gonna add a little bit of bite. I like my rice a little al dente. Here I'm adding a 1/2 cup of stock as I'm getting pretty close to being all the way cooked. You wanna keep an eye out. Take it out, try a kernel, don't eyeball it, because you don't want to have really hard rice or like porridge essentially. So here you can see the rice is starting to get nice and thick. The starch is starting to release. We're going to keep mixing and mixing. And at one point it's going to go extremely fast. You're going to have hard rice and all of a sudden it's cooked. So make sure you're checking on it until you've done it a couple times. You won't really know. And then as soon as you're almost done, you're going to add in your mushrooms. And we're going to mix this all around, combine it all. Do be careful, if you don't mix it a lot, it's gonna start sticking and burning to the bottom. So we're gonna mix this around, and as soon as your rice is done cooking, we're gonna take it off the heat, and we're going to finish it with the butter and cheese. So this takes about 20 minutes. Here you can see how thick it is just with the starch. So from here, we're gonna add in our butter, and we're gonna add it in not all at once, but half of it, and then we're going to mix it in. And here you're gonna start to see it get really, really creamy. So go ahead, mix that butter in, keep mixing and mixing. Don't let it sit there and it'll start to break, so you wanna keep constantly moving. And once that first round of butter has melted, we're gonna add in that second round of butter and do the exact same thing. So here you can see it's gotten much thicker. We haven't added any cream or any milk, nothing to cheat. It's just starch, butter, and now the cheese. So go ahead and add in your Parmesan. Make sure you get all of it because that stuff's delicious and expensive. And we're gonna mix that in. So we're gonna mix that in until it's all well incorporated. Now, the important part here is that as soon as you add in that cheese, you got about 5 minutes before it starts to solidify. So you're gonna wanna serve it fast or keep it relatively warm because risotto is not good at holding for long periods of time. And now we're gonna add in our chives raw. We're gonna give that a mix, and that is it. We're gonna check it for seasoning, of course. Again, be careful when seasoning because Parmesan is quite salty. So make sure you do try it after you add the Parmesan in and then season as needed. So from here, just onto a plate, we're going to throw on that risotto. You can see how gooey and creamy it is. It's loose enough that it's able to move, but it's also stiff enough where it's just not spreading out like a soup. And we're gonna give it a little pat, kind of let it pool out. It shouldn't be so loose that you're having a pool of almost soup coming out of it, and also shouldn't be so heavy and dense that you throw it down and it's just a blob. It should be kind of spreading out slowly, but holding its shape. And we're just gonna finish with a little bit of fresh Parmesan, and that is it. Super easy, extremely rewarding, absolutely delicious. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.